You've heard it said, health is wealth, so enrich your life with the Healthy Home Hour, brought to you by the Healthy Home Market. Every Sunday, 9 to 10 a.m. Know what's new and classic for health and wellness. Meet the local and national experts. Live God's plan to thrive, not just survive. I'm your host, Holly Adams, and welcome to the Healthy Home Hour.
Morning, folks. Thanks for being with us this Memorial Day weekend, or what used to be called Decoration Day, that actually goes back to just after the Civil War. Because, you know, history really does matter. Context is, well, it's big. And our topic today highlights a health food history, a tradition of getting it right with supplements and superfoods. Garden of Life, made famous years ago by Jordan Rubin. I know some of you have read his book, The Baker's Diet. That's the Maker's Diet. And, well, Garden of Life has a legacy of some of the finest vitamins, protein powders, and probiotics available on the market today. And we're going to find out why and what's new with Bruce Topping, national educator with Garden of Life and a serious professional in the health food industry for many years. So keep it locked to Streets 1033 to know about GOL, or Garden of Life, changing supplements. But first, a look at what's up at the Community Wellness Center by the Plaza Midwood store, the Healthy Home Market this week. I wonder if you have ever wanted to connect with the spirit of Polynesia or Hawaii. Well, this Tuesday, the 26th, it's an Aloha gathering at 6:30 to 8, and Amanda Todd is your host for hula classes this time, this week, for this monthly meetup. So once a month, I believe it's the last Tuesday of the month, just for you. And then on Wednesday, it's movie night with The Quest for the Cure, your body's first line of defense. It might surprise you, so come on out. It's 7 to 8 on the 27th. And then Thursday, you've got to be at the Community Wellness Center if you are a headache sufferer. Did you know that 99% of headaches really, they don't even start in the head? There's all kinds of other stuff going on in your body that contributes to headaches. So come for the headache solution at 6:30 to 7:30 with Dr. Matt Lyon, Charlotte's own Dr. Matt Lyon. And then on Friday, it's Chef Amiel and the Raw Vegan Cuisine class. It starts at 6, includes food, recipes, tips to navigate through those recipes, and it's only $20. So come on out. And for more details on any of those classes or others and events happening all month long and into June, there's also postings of the latest discounts at the Healthy Home Markets. Go to healthyhomemkt.com. That's healthyhomemkt.com. So you got to ask the question, are all vitamins created equal? When the bottle says it's natural and it's surrounded by great colors and smiling faces, does that mean that what's in there is truly good for you? To help us sort this out today is Bruce Topping, this Healthy Home Hour. Thanks for joining us, Bruce.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, it's our pleasure. We love Garden of Life, and we've got some great new things to talk about. But I want to first dig in on some of the old things, the important things, the contextual things, like the whys and ways of vitamins. I mean, why did we start making vitamins anyway so many years ago?
That's a great question, and I love your opening, that context and history do matter. And I like to tell people that vitamins, a lot of people never read about this, but I like to explain that vitamins were created because of World War I and World War II. It was really about fortifying these powdered vitamins that had just recently been discovered at that point in history. And they were, of course, discovered them in food, but by the 30s, we really started synthesizing them in the lab, mostly from petrochemicals and all kinds of, really a lot of chemistry tricks. And they were able to build these molecules that would go into your bloodstream and activate certain processes. They would hit certain receptor sites. And that's really where the modern vitamin industry was born. It was an attempt to fortify foods for acute deficiencies. These are army men starving, and they're dying of scurvy and rickets and pellagra and horrible deficiency diseases during wartime. And that's where it all started.
That's pretty interesting because that's kind of different than your average person walking around. I mean, so it begs the question, what is in these vitamins that are made in the lab? What do they do in your body? And are they good for you sometimes?
Yeah, that's a great question. Are they good for us? And that is like that's like $1 million question that's been, I almost think today we're still left with that question. But let's address it. How are they made? Well, nowadays vitamins are no longer made in the 30s and 40s they were made from like coal tar and natural gas and
Wow.
horrible petrochemicals. But nowadays, most of the time, your average vitamin, if you go to the drugstore, or really most stores that sell vitamins, to be true, most of the vitamins that are sold are made from modified bacteria and genetically modified yeast, right? And that's surprising to a lot of people because, gosh, a lot of people think that vitamins are made from ground-up fruits and vegetables, and I hate to drop the truth bombs on your audience today, holiday.
Okay, well, that's what we try to do here, so go for it.
The reality is that if we held their hand and walked them through the lab, they would probably be horrified to see that it's lots of bleach and solvents and benzene and chemicals and that it all mostly comes from things like industrial soybean oil sludge. It used to be Eastman Kodak, the chemical company, was where all the vitamin E came from in our business. Or we talked about, B vitamins. Most of those are made from modified yeast and bacteria. So, it's just not like what people think. In their minds, they have these beautiful pictures of orchards and fruits and berries and vegetables. But in reality, it's a lot of chemistry. And at the end of the day, the results, we have entered into a pharmacologic way of thinking. Starting in the 30s and 40s, we almost studied vitamins like they're drugs, where we isolate one single molecule, which right away is different from food, right? Humans have never eaten a pile of powdered molecules. You don't find that in nature. So now we've entered into this kind of idea, the strategy, where we're going to isolate the nutrients, build a synthetic structure of it that will still hit the receptor sites, of course, and then flood it into the bloodstream at really, really high weights and potencies. And we've kind of trained people to think that milligram weight from the lab, like how many milligrams of B1 are in the powder, we've trained people to think that that number of milligrams or weight is potency. And in my mind, Holiday, I'll tell you, I think it's one of the biggest myths, one of the biggest problems in nutritional science is that weight and potency are really not related in the same way. And people need to understand that it's just about getting real nutrients, getting them the way your body has been getting them for thousands of years, which is with lots of cofactors, as food always has, and then providing them in the same structure, so it's not folic acid, it's a bunch of different folate compounds, that like what you find in spinach or broccoli or turkey. So it's just about giving people natural vitamins that are actually the ones that occur in nature, the ones that we find in food, versus the ones that are synthesized in the lab. And also, in my mind, it's about getting back to real potency levels. For example, 400 international units of vitamin E. People, typically you pick up a vitamin, you see 400 IU of vitamin E. But if you look at how much food you would actually have to eat to get 400 international units of vitamin E, it's about 10 cups of olive oil.
Wow.
And the idea is that many people are trained to look at these super physiological potencies as normal. We've trained them to think that way.
That's so interesting because you're right. It's a very, I have turned over many a bottle in my life, vitamin bottle, and looked at the potencies, and you're talking about weights, and it's a very different concept from what you mentioned, because we're so accustomed to thinking about, this is just like the concentrated, better version of fruits and vegetables, and then then what's on a lot of boxes too is there's herbs and minerals and algae, and are those items we're talking about, they're not really in there exactly, say in the lesser or the generic vitamins?
Yeah, that's right. If you pick up your average vitamin, especially if you go to the drugstore or the grocery store, like if you if you're going to Healthy Home Market, you're going to be looking at a fairly different mix than what you find at like the drugstore or even those pill stores. But yeah, typically your average vitamin will nowadays have all kinds of fruits and leaves and maybe algae and seaweed that they've added in. But in my mind, Holiday, a lot of these are kind of tricks where they've used very tiny amounts, that it's really a chemistry lab vitamin through and through, where they've added in, a tiny sprinkle worth of flax seeds or mushrooms or algae or spirulina. And, I want people to know what a milligram looks like. So I always remind people, a milligram is the same weight as a raspberry seed or a strawberry seed. Like one of the tiny little seeds that you scrape off the flesh of a berry, that weighs 1 milligram.
My goodness.
So when you see like 50 milligrams of, flax seeds, you should know that that's not even one seed. I mean, one tiny little flax seed is going to weigh like 100 milligrams. So this idea that we're putting 50 milligrams of mushrooms or 20 milligrams of carrot powder, it's kind of meant to bamboozle the consumer. It's meant to fool them into thinking, wow, look at all that list of fruits and veggies. That's amazing. But really, I mean, that's like the speck. 1,000 milligrams is 1 gram, and that weighs as much as a paperclip. So when when you see broccoli powder at 100 milligrams, that's 1/10 of a paperclip weight. It's just not really a meaningful amount of broccoli, and really won't do anything for anybody. It's just there for advertising and marketing. So that's a common trick.
That's a little disturbing, That feels, you're saying bamboozled. I'm thinking, it's like a bait and switch. It feels a little, deceitful. Well, Bruce, I'm really glad you're here to tease this out and to educate us all. We're going to take a short break, so stay with us, folks. You're listening to the Healthy Home Hour. I'm Holly Adams here with Bruce Topping today from the Garden of Life on Streets 1033.
Are you living your dream? Lots of us aren't because we don't have a plan. All our dreams need the right plan. At the Charlotte Health Center, get a customized plan to lay down your pain and fatigue and get on your game. Feel the love and skill of Dr. Matt McAleese, chiropractor and founder of the Charlotte Health Center. Align your spine with Dr. Matt. He's got 5 essentials for a victorious life. Experience the energy, the clarity, and creativity of your body and brain when the power's on. The Charlotte Health Center is the largest private and pediatric chiropractic clinic in the QC. Dr. Matt has helped Olympians, celebrities, moms, and kids with exceptional care and concern. Call 704-780-0166. That's 704-780-0166 or charlottehealthcenter.com. Come on, live your dreams.
Novocaine, baby, Novocaine, baby.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Healthy Home Hour. I'm Holly Adams. We're here with Bruce Topping today from the Garden of Life, talking about Garden of Life products and the education and the care that goes into these products that are really at the top tier of vitamin supplementation that you can get today. And I want to let you all know that right now from at all Healthy Home Market stores, for Garden of Life, you can get a 20 to 30% off selected GOL products, items. And before the break, we were talking about the difference, the confusion about the weight and potency and the actual value of nutrition that you're getting from various supplements. And I wanted to say, Bruce, it's so confusing. You mentioned, this has started in the 30s, and they started kind of tinkering around in the lab, and now the weights and the measurements aren't easy to determine exactly what you're getting. And it just seems like around the Second World War, a little before, during, and after, and into the 50s, there was this fascination with chemicals that even went into the poison realm, like pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. And it makes me think that the value of Garden of Life is even greater. And you've got an incredible product line called My Kind Organics. And I'm wondering how difficult it is to make an organic vitamin.
Well, it took us about 3.5 years and it literally sent us around the world. You can't just call up a lab and say, hey, I want a food vitamin. Can you make it all out of organic fruits and veggies? The lab probably would laugh in their face on the phone and say, that's ridiculous. We don't have that. So it really was hard. And what we've done is we've cobbled together a supply chain. And literally it took us over 3 years. So one of our big discoveries was a farm. It's actually located in India. And it's a farm that supplies a lot of fruits and veggies to various companies, and they're organic certified, they're audited. In fact, they're certified through the European Union, so they're really rigorously scrutinized, vetted, and tested. That wasn't enough for us, so we sent over one of our head formulators, and we did a bunch of testing. We sent a videographer to look at all their equipment. We actually sent it off to third parties. Because when we first started getting their raw materials, it looked too good to be true. I mean, I'll say, as one of the formulators, I was sitting down being like, no way, these guys are lying. There's no way they're getting this vitamin B9 from lemons, and they're not getting this vitamin B1 from guavas. But the more we investigated it, the more it turned out to be legitimate, that these people are actually using water extraction with organic acids. They don't use any alcohol. They don't use any benzene or hexane or bleach. And at the end of the day, we were able to get a lot of B vitamins and minerals. We couldn't build the whole vitamin from them, but we could build a lot of B vitamins and certain minerals just from this farm, and they're all organically certified and extracted with water. And then we went off and we found a K2 supplier in South Korea. I'm really excited about K2. We can mention that one later.
Mm-hmm. We got to talk about that.
Oh yeah, K2 is. I'll be careful not to hijack our whole show into vitamin K2, because I've been known to do that. It's a fascinating topic for me, but most vitamins don't even put K2 in there because it's so expensive to manufacture. And then beyond that, we found an iodine source from Iceland. They're made from kelp. It's an organic certified kelp. It's grown out in the ocean, which is really special. We found a B12. It's the first non-GMO B12. It's not made from modified bacteria. So it's we basically spent years poring over and trying to find suppliers. And it took us all over the world. And we found a supply chain, and then we built a special tablet for it. And we've created one of the first ever organic vitamins and the first ever non-GMO verified organic vitamin to have both, to have what we call dual certified. And for us, it's even down to the tablet. How fast, how clean, how good at disintegrating is the tablet. We know a lot of tablets use all kinds of pharmaceutical additives and binders and glazes and lubricants. So we really spent a long time working on almost every aspect of this vitamin, but the best part is it's actually sourced from fruits and leaves and berries rather than GMO bacteria and yeast.
So it's interesting just to focus on the B12 for a minute, because lots of vegetarians have a hard time getting enough B12, and people seem to be stressed and tired, and so there's a lot of conversation out there in the foodisphere about B12. What are you making your B12 from, if not like everybody else?
Yeah, great question. So we struggled with B12. B12, we wanted to get a vegan, vegetarian source, and it turns out that even though we tested algae and we tested seaweeds, we couldn't really get a stable, worthwhile form of cobalamin. What you find are analogs, and they're called cobamides. They're not the amine form. So we actually thought about launching the whole vitamin with no B12. We were not about to put desiccated liver in this pill. It's a vegan formula, right?
Sure.
So we landed on a form from a lab. It's made from bacteria, which is actually where all B12 comes from, whether it comes from animals. Well, the animals get it from bacteria, but we get it from a bacteria. Basically it's a non-modified form. It's like an older lab that does it the old-fashioned way, where they can get the cobalamin, the B12, from bacteria without using GMOs. And if you go look on the shelf, I was actually in a store the other day, and they had over 30 different B12s. And, having worked in the industry so long, I could tell you more than half of them came from the same lab.
Right.
Whereas ours is the only one on the shelf that's actually labeled non-GMO. And it's really a hard thing to find. So what's special about it is that this one is actually grown in living cells. So we took the isolated B12 from bacteria, and we took it to our old friends in New Jersey that work at Grow Company. And Grow Company does this cool thing where they take isolated nutrients and they grow them in yeast cells. There's many versions of this technology. It's actually what a lot of companies refer to as whole food vitamins, where they take isolates and they grow them in living yeast. It's a cool process. We do it too. So our B12 is the one nutrient of the whole line, it's the only one, that actually starts from bacteria instead of a fruit or a leaf or a berry. All the B vitamins, the minerals, everything else is coming from a fruit or a vegetable. But B12 is special that you can't get it. The biology of plants just means they don't store B12. They don't use it in their own life cycle. So it's just not something you can get from plants. But we got a really special one that's the only non-GMO, the only organic B12 I've ever seen in the market.
I'm so glad we're talking about this. Yesterday was the march against Monsanto all over the country. People know that organics are best. And, you don't always think about it in terms of the crossover, carryover into vitamins. Would you say that most vitamins free of genetically modified ingredients, or is it really just top tier, Garden of Life?
It's just the top tier. Honestly, in California, when they were having their big debate about labeling, remember that was about a year ago?
Sure.
There were companies lined up on both sides. There were companies funding the effort to label GMOs, and there were companies fighting and putting money to fight that whole campaign. And if you looked at where most vitamin companies were lined up, it left a lot of eyebrows raised because a lot of companies were actually fighting to not label them. A lot of them aren't ready. If you look at where their B vitamins are coming from, it's GMOs. If you look at where their corn for their vitamin C is coming from, most of the vitamin C on the market is made from GMO corn xylose that's been treated with sulfuric acid and then fermented with GMO sugar beets. It's really hard to find a non-GMO vitamin C raw material for a company to buy. It's really hard. There aren't many out there. And that's just an example. Even the dextrins that are used in the tableting binders, those are mostly from GMO corn. So it's, the industry, by and large, I would say, unless it has a non-GMO seal on it, then you can rest assured it definitely has GMOs.
So what does, my kind, you're talking about sort of a whole supplement, really whole nutrients in these supplements, and they're GMO free. They are right from fruits and vegetables. How does the body absorb them versus some of these others that you've mentioned that are particularly heavy in the isolates? What does the body say and do when they see an isolate versus an organic vitamin?
Well, it would probably be, a several-hour discussion to get into the ins and outs of that, but I'll give it the broad strokes that I think what happens when we use nutrients in a pharmacologic way, meaning when we isolate one compound up to huge doses and we, make it a naked molecule. It's got none of the proteins or minerals or flavonoids or fibers or enzymes or anything else. It's just a pile of ascorbic acid molecules. And when you flood that into your bloodstream, it will bind to certain receptor sites and it will create, biological effects. And there are times, I believe, when that may be a good idea. I think people forget, like you said in the beginning, history matters. And if you look at how the history of vitamins was, remember that they were meant for acute deficiencies. They were meant for men dying of scurvy on the front lines. And I think that if you're going to use isolated, high-dose, old-school vitamins, that's how they should be used. Kind of as an emergency, I'm fortifying my body because I'm in a really tough environment right now. But if you're going to give it to your kid every day, in the hopes that it's going to prevent cancer and heart disease and diabetes, you should know that we have never really seen those results. In the 50 years of studies, we're almost left with more questions than answers. And the big meta-analyses where they study the studies has kind of shown us that long-term outcomes like death and heart disease are just vanishingly rare. We don't see those real results. What we see are blood work. That a lot of companies will talk all day about how good it is to lower homocysteine or lower some marker in the blood. But when you actually look at real outcomes, I think modern vitamins have routinely failed. And it's about trying to get back to real food. And that's what My Kind is about, just trying to give people an option. It's really something new, something that hasn't been out there in the last 50 years. And we're just trying to beat the drum loud that this should be absorbed better. But more than absorption, it's about utilization. It's about safety. We're not flooding your bloodstream with isolated compounds that are so different from nature.
It seems like that would actually be maybe kind of a stress to your body if you're flooding it just with, it's not really working in concert or dancing, so if you will, with your system.
Yeah. Well, the last big meta-analysis came out a year ago, and it was titled "Enough is Enough." And yeah, they did actually show some outright harms. I mean, I think that most vitamins are vastly safer than drugs. But
yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely evidence that high dosages of isolated, nutrients, even B vitamins, can be maybe dangerous long term. So I think it's a grand experiment, and we still don't have very good information on how safe it is long term.
Right. Well, this is a great distinction. It's really important to understand the difference in what we're talking about. I'm so glad that you're sharing this with us, educating us. So we're going to take another break, just a short one. We'll be right back, folks. Stay with us on the Healthy Home Hour.
Are you living your dream? Lots of us aren't, because we don't have a plan. All our dreams need the right plan. At the Charlotte Health Center, get a customized plan to lay down your pain and fatigue and get on your game. Feel the love and skill of Dr. Matt McAleese, chiropractor and founder of the Charlotte Health Center. Align your spine with Dr. Matt. He's got 5 essentials for a victorious life. Experience the energy, the clarity, and creativity of your body and brain when the power's on. The Charlotte Health Center is the largest private and pediatric chiropractic clinic in the QC. Dr. Matt has helped Olympians, celebrities, moms, and kids with exceptional care and concern. Call 704-780-0166. That's 704-780-0166 or charlottehealthcenter.com. Come on, live your dreams.
Novocaine, baby, baby. Novocaine, baby.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Healthy Home Hour, sponsored by the Healthy Home Market. I'm Holly Adams, and we're here with Bruce Topping of Garden of Life, talking about, an amazing conversation about the difference between whole, real nutrients in your vitamins, organic, non-GMO, versus, some of the others, the lesser type, and that actually are more, isolates and put together in a different way that your body doesn't really love. And Bruce, you cited this meta-analysis called Enough is Enough, and that, some vitamins that are of lesser quality actually can cause harm. And, one of the things that I'm really fascinated about with Garden of Life is how you're really always kind of at the cutting edge. You seem to always be exploring what's new and best, and have such a good focus for trying to tease out the best and offer it to the customer. And one of the new products that I have come to really like is organic plant protein. There's like 4 yummy flavors, and it even tastes good with just plain water, which is really unusual. And folks in the industry think that it's truly innovative. I'm wondering, where does the protein come from?
Protein comes from mostly peas. We grow the peas in Calgary. They're certified organic, of course. And I'll say that conventional peas are about $3.50 per kilogram, whereas the organic peas are almost $11. So yeah, we're paying over twice the price.
Wow.
But they taste better, and they have better nutrition. There's more antioxidants, and ultimately it supports a better style of agriculture. So yeah, it's mostly peas, but we also, because we don't just want the amino acid profile of straight pea, we add in cranberry and pumpkin seeds and moringa leaves and chia seeds and flax seeds. So it's actually 7 protein sources, all certified organic, all non-GMO verified. I love that one too the vitamins are naturally occurring. We're not spiking it with the laboratory isolates. You're not going to find thiamine mononitrate on the label, or riboflavin hydrochloride, or, when you look at most protein powders or vitamins, you see a list of, what I would call semi-synthetics, where a lot of them don't even exist in that structure in nature. There is no thiamine mononitrate in food. I mean, there's thiamine, sure, but it's not bound to nitric acid as a single salt, like a mononitrate. That only exists in a lab. And that's kind of what we've done. We've basically taken food and we've built synthetic structures that are meant to mimic and hit the same receptors in our body. And I love that, like you said, Garden of Life, we're all about trying to buy the best. We actually contract with small domestic family farms. We're really good at vetting and learning their best practices. We want to know, do you have good separation between the fields that are non-organic? What are you using for your water? Do you have children working on your farm?
Right.
We want to know all that stuff. And that's why I think we've done so well, why we're among the best in this business, is that we're all about raw materials. We're all about the supply chain, and we're getting really good at investing in the best we can find. And I'll honestly say a lot of what's out there is not organic. I mean, I'm almost sometimes, I feel like hurt sometimes that the industry I work in, that I've grown up working in, my mom runs chains of stores, I love this business, and it hurts my heart that I walk into stores and most of the proteins, more than 50% of them, are conventional with bleach and solvents and pesticides and GMOs, and people don't know because it has a beautiful, shiny, happy face with an orchard on the front, and it makes it, it says natural. But it's about finding organic, finding non-GMO, finding natural vitamins that are real and authentic rather than the chemistry lab isolates. So it's just about doing it right, and I think we put our money where our mouth is, and that's why Garden of Life is among the best.
Yeah, you have such an incredible reputation, and lots of sales that show up in the spins information that is, all about the sales at the register at around the country, and people feel better on your products and come back, and so many protein powders also have grains in them and brown rice, but some folks can't tolerate all that. And I'm wondering if you'd tell us, what is the issue with grains? Why have you kept it out of organic plant protein?
Right. Well, we've seen a big rise in the whole paleo diet, primal diet, grain-free diet. There's many versions of this, but essentially a lot of people are finding out they just don't do well with grain. And I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one, grains tend to have a very high glycemic index, meaning they're kind of a body slam for our blood sugar. They just shoot our bloodstream way up. I think modern whole wheat flour is actually a higher glycemic index than a candy bar, which is amazing but true.
Wow. Yeah.
And then we look at the role of gluten. Gluten is a really sticky, elastic protein. It's a whole family of proteins. And it turns out that modern grains, like modern wheat, is a hybrid. And it's been, modified over the generations to be more productive and more resistant. But it turns out there's more gluten than ever before. In fact, it's probably 10 times higher than any other grain that's ever been consumed by humans. And it turns out that gluten can kind of gum up the machinery of our immune system. It kind of is known to cause leaky gut. In addition to that, grains are also high in lectins. Lectins are little sugary glycoproteins that are a defense. They're actually a kind of a defense of the plant. Plants don't necessarily want to be eaten by insects and animals, so they build their own defenses. And it turns out lectins and also phytates, that's another one, are digestive inhibitors. And so a lot of people are learning that, gosh, we want to avoid, things that cause leaky gut or give us gas or shoot our bloodstreams up really high. I mean, a lot of people it's almost magical. They get off grain and their energy level and their skin and so many systems of their body just really start improving.
Oh, I'm so glad you're giving us some details on it, because there is, we have a whole section of gluten-free products, and people are talking about it all the time at our stores. And I didn't realize that it actually is kind of forms leptin which is
Yeah.
is very interesting. And that's such a kind of
Yeah,
insulin resistance issue going on there. And would you say it's a precursor to diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, there's thoughts that it is. I'm not one of these people that thinks that all grains are always bad for every human being on Earth in every circumstance. I think you can find cultures that ate lots of amaranth or teff or quinoa or millet, and nobody had diabetes in those cultures. I think it's the modern versions that we make them so fun to eat and easy to cultivate and more bushels per acre, and then we dress them up with trans fats and corn syrup and professionally craft the flavors to hit your brain in just the right way. And it's all these factors together that just destroy our metabolic machinery and lead to insulin resistance and syndrome X. And so it's, there's a lot of factors. I don't want to pin it all on modern grains, but I will say those modern hybrids are very inflammatory and are hard to digest.
Right. How about soy?
Oh boy. You're going to pull me off sides. I'm pretty anti-soy. I'm really all for fermented traditional soy. If you're eating miso soup or soy sauce or tempeh or, all those things are really healthy. But if you're eating modern industrial soy, where it's GMO and it's been acid washed and high temperature dipped and bleached and extruded and deodorized, then it's no longer good for you. And despite the amino acids, it has great amino acids, but it's also hard on your thyroid. It's full of digestive inhibitors. Soybeans, I think, are one of the highest of all legumes ever tested. So they're one of the toughest to digest, which is why if you read about how they've been used for thousands of years, always via fermentation, always, a process of breaking down the enzyme inhibitors and making it digestible and making it a superfood. So in short, I'm all for fermented soy, but I'm all against industrial modern soy.
Oh, I'm so glad we talked about this because there's so many people who think soy is terrific, and particularly folks that are kind of new to vegetarianism. They're getting on board with not eating meat and chicken and fish, and they think soy is going to just provide everything they need for protein. But you really have to be careful. Not all soy is created equal. Would you say that even the organic soy is still kind of tough if you don't ferment it on your digestive system?
That's right, yeah. Organic just means it hasn't been fertilized with synthetic fertilizers or sprayed with herbicides and fungicides, but that doesn't mitigate the fact that the bean itself has developed defenses and have a very long maturing, have a long maturation, which means it stores up more of those defensive compounds. The beans don't necessarily want to be eaten, so they've developed defenses. And those defenses can make it hard to digest, hard to utilize, and can mean you end up with a lot of undigested protein rotting in your colon, and that creates a breeding ground for a whole bunch of inflammation and a lot of bad, microbes, a lot of kind of shift in our bowel ecology. So I'm one of those that learns the hard way. So I was a vegetarian growing up, just like you said, in my mom's stores, and I ate Boca burgers and all kinds of tofu patties and the TVP out of the bulk bins.
Right.
And I learned the hard way that soy can kind of wreck your health if you don't do it right.
Good. Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm glad we're talking about it. So very interesting. We're going to be right back, folks. Stay with us. We're talking to Bruce Topping from Garden of Life, and really with some great info about how to stay healthy. So, as usual, we're here for you on the Healthy Home Hour.
Are you living your dream? Lots of us aren't because we don't have a plan. All our dreams need the right plan. At the Charlotte Health Center, get a customized plan to lay down your pain and fatigue and get on your game. Feel the love and skill of Dr. Matt McAleese, chiropractor and founder of the Charlotte Health Center. Align your spine with Dr. Matt. He's got 5 essentials for a victorious life. Experience the energy, the clarity, and creativity of your body and brain when the power's on. The Charlotte Health Center is the largest private and pediatric chiropractic clinic in the QC. Dr. Matt has helped Olympians, celebrities, moms, and kids with exceptional care and concern. Call 704-780-0166. That's 704-780-0166 or charlottehealthcenter.com. Come on, live your dreams.
Novocaine, baby, baby. Novocaine,
Glad you're with us this Memorial Day weekend, talking to Bruce Topping about Garden of Life, really the premier vitamin company. And we're talking about so many wonderful ways that they have brought sourced products from around the world to bring them to you that are organic and really intelligently put together. You know, Bruce, it's so funny that the more you dig into plants and plant proteins and the beauty of plants, you really see that plants are incredibly smart.
Yeah, they have a lot of intelligence. I mean, plants and animals, I mean, maybe I'm a biology kind of guy, so I look at their kind of evolutionary history, and I look at how animals and plants have co-evolved, and that our biology is attuned to those signals, that when we eat, plant foods, it actually changes our genetic expression. And we're learning a lot about that. The whole epigenome, it's really the word epi, the prefix just means over. And we've learned that your genome is not just a static repository of code. It's a really shifting, changing thing. It determines what genes are turned on and what genes are not turned on. And it turns out that plants have a lot of wisdom when it comes to our own genomes and how we affect theirs too.
That's so fascinating because it really does give one hope about, even though your grandfather or grandmother or aunties, they may have died or been sick from something, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get it, right?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite doctors, I love his presentations. He always gets up there and he says, well, genetics are phenomenal in determining where we break under adverse conditions. And I love the way he says that. He says, usually the genetics don't do the breaking. That's usually our diet and our lifestyle. But genetics determine susceptibility. So, if your lineage had, a weaker, more vulnerable heart setup, where your heart was more vulnerable, the valves weren't as strong, the artery vessels were more prone to leakiness, then your family, is if you live on trans fats and corn syrup, heart disease is going to be what shows up because it's where you're vulnerable. Whereas other genetic lineage might have weak kidneys and a really strong heart, but really leaky gut, or there's so many differences in how our physiology is built, and I think genetics just determine the susceptibility of where we're vulnerable. But truly, you can find lots of cultures in the ancient world, these recordings of primitive groups that lived on very different diets. Some of them ate mostly sweet potatoes and plantains and bananas and insects, and none of them had any cancer. None of them had heart disease that was ever recorded. And then you find, cultures in the North of Alaska that are living in whale blubber and seal oil, and again, none of them have any cancer, none of them have heart disease. So I think that we can find a lot of examples where people living on traditional diets are spot on.
Yeah, it's staggering to think when you compare that with the idea with the facts. It's bantied about now in science that about 4,000 people die every day from cancer, diabetes, and heart disease combined.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really is. It's nice to know that you can take control and not go in that direction.
Yeah, to me it's all about immunology. The big frontier of why most Westerners are dying from these big inflammatory syndromes like dementia and heart disease and cancer is turning out to be that it's our immune systems. And most of our immune system is in our gut. So it's really about, nourishing our gut ecology, trying to get the right critters to live there and keep the bad critters out. And then also, looking at all these other signals like sleep patterns, stress response, obviously dietary factors like nutrition plays a role. But it's trying to put all the players in the club. It's trying to create the perfect storm that really manages our immune system rather than let it get, off kilter and start to go into a tailspin and become haywire. And I think that's really what's happening for most Westerners and why thousands of them are dying of inflammatory Western diseases that we never really saw hundreds of years ago in the numbers we're seeing today.
That brings up, I want to mention again, Garden of Life product Primal Defense. I mean, it is the number one probiotic sold in America. And I know there's several strains, I think like 13 different enzymes and quite a big bunch of probiotics in the organic plant protein. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Primal Defense is what launched our whole company. It is a very special probiotic. It's very different from most other probiotics. Even our own other probiotics don't have the same strain. They're very good in their own right, but what makes Primal Defense so special, it uses a strain that many people would refer to as a soil organism. It actually says that on the box, homeostatic soil organism. It's a bacteria from the dirt, and it turns out that special strain of bacteria can really be incredibly effective at eradicating infections and kind of being a trash compactor in the gut, clearing back the brush, leveling the landscape, so to speak. It turns out that strain makes a lot of antibiotic compounds, and a lot of people have dormant, kind of long hidden infections. Maybe it's fungus, maybe it's Clostridia, maybe it's yeast, maybe it's parasites. A lot of people just kind of have a pretty bad. It's almost like they're like they own an apartment complex and they've got a bunch of bad renters. People that have moved in that are just like, they're tearing up the fixtures, they're playing loud music late at night. They're selling drugs in the corner, whatever. And it's like we need to get rid of those bad guys, and they're hard to evict. Mm-hmm. So that's where you need the stormtroopers, the commandos. And that's really what Primal Defense is. There's a reason that it's still one of the best-selling probiotics, 15 years after we launched it. I mean, for many people, it's like I can't even tell them about any other formula. They're like, no, I'm here for Primal Defense. I don't want to hear about anything new. This one saved my life. I'm done. And so it does have a cult following.
So, you mentioned something else called Moringa, and that is an awesome product. Tell us a little bit about Moringa, why you've got it in organic plant protein.
Yeah, we're actually going bigger and bigger with our Moringa. Moringa is a plant that's been studied a lot in the last 100 years, mostly in India and Africa. It's actually been used in feeding programs. They use it for pregnant and nursing mothers. The thing about Moringa leaves is that it is just chock full of antioxidants and minerals and certain vitamins. So it's a powerhouse, and we love it because it also supports small farmers in a very poor part of the world, which is Africa. So we buy from a company called Afriplex. It's a fair trade certified company. It's a direct trade, so we end up providing real income for thousands of people who don't have a lot of other opportunities in the sub-Saharan part of Africa. So we buy it, and we put it in a lot of our formulas. Of course, it's in the organic plant protein, and it's not really contributing a lot of the protein. I think it's less than 2% of the protein. It's there for the nutrients. So the minerals and vitamins, again, they're not coming from the lab. They're not those synthetic isolates made from GMO yeast. They're actually getting from organic Moringa. We put it in our raw meal, too. You'll notice we've recently bumped up the level of Moringa because we're just big fans of this plant. We think it's good for the environment to be grown. We think it's good for the communities that grow it. And we think it's great for the consumers that eat it because it is so chock full of nutrition.
The other thing that is so impressive with this plant protein in particular is the nut so many reasons, but there's also almost no sugar or sweeteners, but it still tastes good. And was that a challenge in the formulation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, that was the number one thing. We wanted the best tasting plant protein in the world. And we know a lot of plant proteins can be gritty, they can be chalky, they can have weird bitter notes. So we use organic stevia. It's the Sweet Leaf brand. We like them because they're grown in the United States and they're certified organic. And we don't use a huge whopping gob of that stuff. Stevia, you have to be careful with it. If you use too much, it can take on almost a bitter, artificial note in your palate. It just doesn't taste right.
Yes, so it can.
It's about the care of blending a high-quality stevia and doing it at just the right levels. And I love the flavors. The coffee one, we use Bob Marley coffee. It's Bob Marley's son, Rohan Marley. And it's a gourmet coffee that we grind up into that one with a little bit of stevia. It's not super sweet, but I actually had some of that this morning. It really fuels me.
Yeah, man. So, we're going to take another short break. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back talking about Garden of Life, stepping into the Garden of Life, right into the garden that gets to your gut through these supplements. So stay with us on Streets 103.3.
Are you living your dream? Lots of us aren't because we don't have a plan. All our dreams need the right plan. At the Charlotte Health Center, get a customized plan to lay down your pain and fatigue and get on your game. Feel the love and skill of Dr. Matt McAleese, chiropractor and founder of the Charlotte Health Center. Align your spine with Dr. Matt. He's got 5 essentials for a victorious life. Experience the energy, the clarity, and creativity of your body and brain when the power's on. The Charlotte Health Center is the largest private and pediatric chiropractic clinic in the QC. Dr. Matt has helped Olympians, celebrities, moms, and kids with exceptional care and concern. Call 704-780-0166. That's 704-780-0166 or charlottehealthcenter.com. Come on, live your dreams.
Novocaine, baby, baby. Novocaine, baby.
Hey, we're back. You're listening to the Healthy Home Hour. We're talking to Bruce Topping from Garden of Life. I'm Holly Adams, and I just want to let you know that right now at all Healthy Home Markets, there are selected items of Garden of Life that are 20 to 30% off. So a lot of these great products we've been talking about today, you can get a big discount on. And, I want to ask you, because people come into the store all the time, Bruce, about, which protein to get, and some people are really focused on whey protein, and they say, I can't build the bulk or repair the tissues. And I want to talk a little bit about whey. And there's denatured and not natured, though it seems that it would all be denatured because you're not getting it right out of the cow. Help us sort this out a little bit. What is whey? Why are there problems with it?
Great. So whey protein is a milk protein. It's really the better of the two. Milk is mostly casein, which is a sticky glue-like protein, not as good. Then there's whey, which whey has a great amino acid profile. In fact, whey proteins traditionally, you went back and look at the bodybuilder magazines where they have all the guys in oil and the spandex. Right. Typically they'll rank whey and egg protein as the best. And the reason for that is that it has the best amino acid ratios. And they study this in these labs where they measure how many of the amino acids get to the blood and how long they're retained. And so whey and egg proteins typically look the best. And after I say all that, you may be thinking, well, dang, I should go buy whey protein. That sounds like the best. But here's the dirty little secret of the whey protein market, and it's sourced from cheese factories. And the cheese factories buy it from feedlots and CAFOs, right? So if you picture the animals standing in manure, eating soy pellets and dried distillers grains and getting all kinds of, anabolic steroids and growth promoters and, of course, antibiotics and hormones. And then it goes to the cheese factory, right, where it's acid washed and high temperature bleached and extruded and hydrolyzed. Hydrolysis is where you throw it in a big vat with sulfuric acid. And then at the end it's pasteurized, right? So 250 degrees for 10 seconds or so. So that's what you're getting, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, it's definitely got amino acids.
You're right.
But, it's definitely supporting one of the worst industries the world has ever known. I guess I grew up in the Midwest. I live in Missouri, and I'm intimately familiar with large-scale industrial agriculture, and I'm familiar with how atrocious and how just absolutely horrible it is for everybody, including the humans who work there, including the animals that live in the vicinity of 100 miles. I mean, you smell these things before you see them. So it's, I think most people, if they actually saw a glimpse of where that whey protein was sourced from, they would be horrified. They would stuff their billfold further into their pocket and run and fly from the shelf. But instead, they're fooled. They think it's, small dairies with grass-fed cows. The word grass-fed has popped up almost overnight on every canister, and the prices didn't change. And that's because it's kind of an easy loophole you can drive a truck through. The loophole is that the law says access to pasture. That's all it says. So you can feed them 30 pounds of grain a day, and if they eat a half pound of grass, well, that'll be grass-fed, right on the label. The word undenatured is actually completely unregulated. So anybody can put the word undenatured, even if it's, toxic fuel rods from Fukushima. Those are legally undenatured, right? So it's just, there's a lot of shenanigans. There's a lot of chicanery, a lot of marketing, a lot of pitch, a lot of hype. But the reality is that plant proteins used to suck because they had really bad amino acid scores. I mean, like soy protein was like only half of the amino acid retention of whey. You just didn't hold on to the amino acids as well. So the bodybuilders weren't completely wrong when they were buying, animal proteins. They really did work better back then. But nowadays, you can get plant proteins that are right next to whey or eggs on the BV test. Meaning when they test biological value and they're measuring nitrogen in your blood and they're looking at the lab scores. Nowadays, you can make a plant protein that is going to be right there. It's not going to beat whey. You can't beat whey. But you can get right there next to it so that for your average bodybuilder, runner, athlete, college kid, senior, the guy who actually holds the record right now for powerlifting is a German man who is a vegan. And his name is Patrick Baboumian. I'm probably getting his name wrong, but yeah, the guy is like he looks like a freight train, and he always wears these shirts that exclaim how he's a vegan badass. And the guy is just a tank. And I think it's interesting to note that this man who's so huge and can pick up 1,200 pounds and walk a big distance with it, he is a vegan. So I think it should stand as a good example of how that old myth that you can't get big and you can't get, what's the new word, swole. You can't get swole on plant proteins. That has turned out to be wrong. And there's lots of guys that are huge and massive and are really strong and powerful, and they got it all from plant protein.
So Bruce, what's swole? Can you spell that for us?
Yeah, I've only heard it from the young bodybuilder guy, but I'm guessing it's SWOLL. Like instead of saying swollen, they're just swole. So it's the new term. That's what the kids are saying nowadays.
Okay, I'm glad we're up to speed here. Thanks. I don't want to go anywhere without asking you about the vitamin 2K or K2.
Vitamin K2. Yeah, so really the first new vitamin since 1948 when B12 came out. And the first paper I've ever read on K2 was published in 96. And what K2 does is it basically shuttles calcium around. And that sounds like, well, that's a small player. But shuttling calcium and controlling calcium is turning out to be a really big deal. And that's because arterial plaque, the plaque in our arteries that causes heart attacks and strokes, turns out to be dominated by calcium deposits. For all the talk of cholesterol and all the talk of saturated fat, those do play a role. But it's turning out that depositing calcium into our arteries is maybe the biggest single factor. And so I think, with the animal studies, and we haven't shown this with humans, but with animals, they've actually reversed arteriosclerosis with mice and rats. And when this gets published in humans, oh my gosh, the floodgates are going to open. I looked up our spot price for K2. We're paying over $100,000 per kilogram wholesale. So it's an expensive vitamin, and that's why you just don't really see it in hardly any vitamin formulas out there. We get ours from South Korea. It's a company that makes it from non-GMO natto, which is a fermented soy. Not actually eating any soy, but they're getting the K2, it's called menaquinone. They're getting those vitamin K2s from fermented soy. It's a really special nutrient, and I think people are going to hear a lot more about it in the next 20 years.
Well, this is a lot of great info. I really have always loved your product line, and I encourage folks to come and check it out. There's this discount going on, 20 to 30%. And Bruce, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. It was great having you. So, folks, that's Bruce Topping from Garden of Life, national educator and longtime professional in the health food industry. Sounds like he's actually got some family roots in there. And so I encourage you to step into the Garden of Life at the Healthy Home Market for the 20 to 30% off. Get the organic plant protein and check it out. Start up with that. So enjoy this long weekend, and until next week, I'll see you at the Garden. This is Streets 103.3, Charlotte's new hip-hop station.
Pay it forward and restore yourself by making the healthy choices for you and your family, and enjoy life with the Healthy Home Market. Feel the goodwill and own great health. Check it out at healthyhomemkt.com. That's healthyhomemkt.com for store locations, details, and discounts. Get the best of God's green blue earth at the Healthy Home Market.